Biggest tips and tricks in Ghost of Tsushima Legends that you absolutely need to know, so let's go. Coming up first, should you unlock multiple characters and focus on bringing them all up, or should you just main one of them? Especially after the tutorial that teaches you about the basics of each of the 4 classes, eventually you will only unlock one of them and play with it for quite a bit of time until you get 7 more levels and progressively unlock new characters along the way. But the question now is, should you focus on all of these at the same time, or should you just main one of them? Well, my biggest first suggestion is to actually only focus on one main, at least in the first few hours of the Legends update. There's a few reasons for why you will want to do that, and most of it boils down to the amount of investment that you need to pour into one single class to actually make it really powerful. So leveling up will take quite a bit of time, especially if you're just the type that doesn't play every single day, so you will want to focus on that character right off the bat. Then you will also need quite a lot of gear and resources to invest into that character so that you can make it that much more powerful. And finally, the more powerful that character is, the faster it is going to get access to new content, to higher challenges that will in turn provide way better rewards. If you were to do the opposite, it will literally take you a very long time to even reach those places, so that is why I fully suggested to go with one character at first. This brings us to the second point, so let's talk about some of the stats that you can see on your character, and we will start with the chi levels, which is the equivalent of power levels in Ghost of Tsushima Legends. So the chi level is something that you will need to pay close attention to, because this will influence both how much damage your character will deal as well as how much damage it will receive. The higher the chi level is, the higher the damage you're going to deal, but also the less damage you're going to get from the enemies. Now, chi is something that you exclusively find only on gear, so the appearance tab is not going to influence anything at all, only the one with the gear pieces. The higher quality the item is, the higher the chi you will find onto it. So what this does is basically it's going to average out all of the items you currently have equipped on that character, and it will give you a final chi level over there at the top. And you will want to use this because this is going to give you access to additional challenges, to additional content, and especially so if you want to play on that gold difficulty, or if you want to do the weekly nightmare challenges that give some of the best rewards, you will want to achieve those certain requirements, which will be quite high. Also, since we are on the subject of chi, I also fully recommend to go for the one that has the highest level currently in your inventory, because at first it's probably not gonna matter too much what types of stats or bonuses these items will have, and it's likely that you will want to actually get the one that has the highest level so that you can get the high rewards much faster. Moving on to number 3, let's say you get a piece of gear, you kinda like it, it has a good chi level, but you don't like the perks of it. Well, there is actually a complete stat reroll system in Ghost of Tsushima Legends that lets you change pretty much everything about that item, from its quality, its perks, literally everything, even down to the chi levels. You can actually change that with the reroll system. So there's 3 types of rerolls in the game. There's the reforge, there's the reroll property, and then there's the reroll perk that you can find right here by simply going into the reforge option of the screen. Now let's start with the reforge option, because this is the one that's most costly, but also the one that kind of changes the most about your items. So it can change pretty much everything from the rarity to the chi level, even some of those perks over there can be changed. In this case, the possible outcomes are going to be shown on the right side of the screen. So for the end game gear that you will get, you will have possible outcomes where you will be able to upgrade them to epic quality, even if they might be rare, or maybe even to legendary quality, or whatever it is next to the epic quality. And this also goes in for the chi range. Currently for this item right here, it's still going to be 29 after the reforge, but for items that are higher, well, level, they might give you a much better stat range on that. Keep in mind that this is random and you can get a maybe worse outcome than the one that you currently have. Meanwhile, for the second one, this is going to roll that perk over there in the middle, the melee stagger damage, and if it rolls, it gives me the possibility of spawning one of these other perks right there, a chance between these 4 right here. In this case, as you can see, it rolled on the possibility of getting a melee stagger damage plus 11% from the existing ones, but I believe that if you craft it again, it might roll a secondary one, a different one from the list right there. Now for this item right here, I wasn't able to also re-roll the perk at the bottom without having the need of also reforging the item entirely, which would lose the the one that I got from the middle one, which was with the reroll property one. So I think that at least for the low level ones you can either choose the one or the other, but if you want to switch again you will need to reforge the item entirely, which is going to again provide different types of rolls on the entire item altogether. So choose wisely with these items. Now currently I don't recommend going in and rerolling on anything because you're constantly going to get brand new gear. So for now it is better to just keep the ones that you have and then just hope for something better to drop, and eventually after you have at least 110 plus of chi, then you can think about it. Moving on to number 4, let's talk about dismantling. This is the next tip that I recommend you guys doing. For all of the low level gear that you have, you can go ahead and dismantle it by pressing the dismantle button on your controller, and this is going to give you some of the resources that you can then funnel into your other gear to upgrade it or to reroll some of its stats. So definitely go ahead and do that. Don't wait for these to fill up your inventory because it is definitely not going to be worth it. Moving on to number 5, there are different stances even in Ghost of Tsushima Legends, but at first you might no longer have them. So for the co-op mode, Legends will now have stances specific to each katana that you actually get. So while at first you might only get access to one single stance, eventually you will find katanas that might even give you access to all of the stances in the game. Like take for example this weapon right here that gives me access both to the moon stance as well as to the regular stone stance that you have by default in the main campaign, and you can quickly switch between these two. But in the game I still don't have access to the other two ones that I might have had in the main story campaign. So this is something that you have to play around with, see which ones are better for you and see which ones are better for the content that you're doing. In the early stages the stone and the water stance might be the best because most of the enemies are going to be the sword ones or the pike users, so in this case this might be your best option. But moving on to number 6, we've talked about those currencies, I've teased them, let's talk about the currencies. There are currently 3 currencies in Ghost of Tsushima Legends that can be given to you by completing daily challenges, doing quick play, or pretty much just playing the game and finishing the content in the Legends mode. The first one on the far right of the screen is going to be the Essence. This is something that is going to give you the possibility to unlock additional technique points, but it's also used at rerolling your stats on gear. The second one is going to be the Honor. This is mostly used to upgrade the gear and pretty much nothing else. So if you want to reroll those stats, if you want to reforge it, if you want to reroll the perks, this and the Essence is something that you will be using. And finally we have the final resource right here that is also used in reforging and rerolling the perks at the bottom. Now the Essence and the Honor, as I've said, is something that you get from the quick play or doing story or survival missions. Meanwhile the last resource right here is going to be something that you only get from doing daily challenges or from dismantling gear. The higher the quality of these items, the higher the quality of the resources that you're going to get. But let's move over to number 7 and talk about the daily challenges. You know, the ones that you have beneath the other content right here on the left side. There's 3 daily challenges that you can complete in Ghost of Tsushima Legends, and they will all provide this resource right here that is very useful at reforging or rerolling your perks, so you will definitely need it. You will get about 7 per each of the challenge, and if it happens for you to not like that challenge, maybe it's too difficult or it doesn't fit your current character or build, you can absolutely reroll on it and get something else that might be a little bit easier to complete. Again, it takes about 24 hours for these to reset, so play on them and do them as often as possible. Moving on to number 8, let's talk about the quick play that you will want to definitely do every single day. So the quick play, unlike doing singular missions, is going to provide you additional rewards that will actually give you more honor and more essences that you can further funnel into your characters. Now at first the quick play will only work for your survival missions because they get to unlock immediately as you start the Legends mode, but if you want to unlock the story quick play, you will need to complete all of the 9 story chapters on the bronze difficulty, which shouldn't take you too long. It also gives you a ton of rewards, so go ahead, do that. Once you have completed the 9th on the bronze difficulty, they are going to open up in the quick play options. The only thing that you need to keep keep in mind is that it's going to randomly select one of these missions, so you will never know which one of them is going to happen, but also the matchmaking in the game is going to be that much snappier because everybody is going to do that quick play. Moving on to number 9, let's talk finally about some combat tips because there are many of them in total, and of course I'm gonna split these between the regular 2-player co-op missions and the 4-player survival mode. So coming up first, very important, you will encounter these enemies that can be linked with one another. The problem with these is that if you only kill a part of them, like one of the group, and leave the other ones opened up and still alive, they can fully resurrect each other, so you will want to actually take all of these at the same time, or at the very least in a very short time window between one another. Otherwise you might risk just having all of them resurrect again, and it's gonna be quite a pain. Another type of enemy that you will encounter are these kind of like mini bosses that can create huge AoE healing rings that basically fully regenerate enemies very fast while they are inside of those massive AoE rings. Well, you have two possibilities over here. On one side you can either lure the enemies outside of the ring so you can easily take them down, or simply go in against the main target, the main healer, just assassinate it, and that's going to remove the ring, and it's going to let the other enemies to become really easy targets that you can quickly pick off. Moving on to the third enemy type, there's going to be these ones that can be attuned to certain types of elements, like you can see some of them glowing in green, in blue, in orange, and the thing about them is that if you don't have your sword attuned to the proper element to match with it, you're barely going to even deal any damage onto it. This is why in this case you will want to interact with some of these objects that will attune you to that specific element, so that you can go ahead against this target and then deal the full potential damage. Again, just look for anything that glows in the same color and you will be able to attune to that. But let's move over to the survival mode and go over some more tips that will make it that much easier for you, especially since survival has a ton of waves, at the very least 15, and on the higher challenges it can go up to 25, and on top of it all there's also boss waves with really strong enemies that increasingly get stronger as you progress through the waves. So the first one that I recommend is to stick with your party, or at the very least with at least one more party mate. The reasons are multiple, but it mostly boils down to your ability to take down multiple enemies at the same time, because outside of your ultimate you're usually going to only take enemies one by one if you are on your own, at the very least in the beginning stages. This is going to be even more important because each of these survival maps are going to have 3 separate control points that eventually will get ambushed by enemies even at the same time, so you will want to stick with your party, take them down fast, and then try to move faster to the other ones that might also be under attack. So that is why the next tip on the list is to also keep your strongest abilities only for the tough encounters, and only once you see that the challenges are ramping up and there's more tougher and tougher enemies that you cannot take in a timely manner, for which those ultimates are going to be very useful. Also, this brings us to the next tip, and this is mostly boiling down to how easy it is for you to move between these control points, because usually they are quite far from one another. That is why in the downtime between enemy waves spawning, you will want to actually stay somewhere in the middle, or at the very least onto vantage points that will easily let you access those other areas that you might want to go into and prevent the enemies from taking down the control point. Again, it depends on the map, but usually it is between the control points, and you will want to stay close to some of these higher up elements where you can use your grappling hook to get faster to them. Another huge tip that you need to follow is to also revive your teammates whenever possible. If you follow my tips and stick with your party, you're going to be able to do that really easily. Now, there are healing possibilities during the match, both from your abilities but also from certain items. Now, avoid what I just did over here. As you saw, I activated that drum. There's a limited amount of drums in each match. They do replenish between a certain amount of waves, but you will want to keep these for when the entire party is close to that. So maybe ping these so that everybody in the party goes there, gets the full healing and the residual healing from after the first explosion. But in the meantime, you can totally go ahead and take these shrines, for example, like this one right here, that will fully replenish your ammo, your stuff, your kunais, but they will also provide some more HP, which is definitely gonna be useful. The only final point that I can give you guys also for the survival mode is to try to complete all of the waves, because look at how much of a difference there is between an incomplete survival mission and a fully complete one. Basically, if you complete all of the waves, you get at least a handful of these rewards, a ton of items, you get like at least like 4 or 5 items, and you also get a ton more resources that you can put into your character even further. But that is pretty much it with the update and with the biggest tips and tricks that I have for you guys for now. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video at any point, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.